and welcome to a special edition of the Belleville Sens podcast, on to episode 6. And a special edition this week as we have a little bit more than a week's worth of action to recap. Senators finished off a 4-game homestand. They went 3-1, so we're going to recap those 4 games and get you set for a trio of games in the Atlantic Division this week. We'll also get to know your FO with Ben Cochrane, Belleville Sens Manager of Business Operations. David Foote, Joel Vanderlaan here with you as we always are. Thanks for taking some time to tune in to this week's episode with a lot to unpack, Joel, after, again, the Sens have what we'll call a successful homestand, following off that less than successful weekend in Cleveland a week ago. Belleville picking up wins over Syracuse, Laval, and then finishing the homestand with a matinee loss on Family Day, which is when we're recording this, and we're doing it in the midst of the post-game community skate presented by CAA, so you may hear a little bit of extra noise and activity coming through the microphones on this week's edition of the show. It really was a nice response from the Belleville Sens after losing both games in Cleveland, and less than stellar efforts, to say the least, against the Monsters, but they come back. They pick up a big win against Syracuse on Wednesday, and then Friday, Saturday victories over Laval. The offense is rolling. Things kind of screeched to a halt on Monday afternoon, but we'll get there. Let's start with the game against Syracuse on Wednesday. Angus Crookshank scores the game winner in a 4-2 victory with Antoine Bibeau making 34 saves.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, I think the biggest thing to take away from that game is that they got back in the win column, and sometimes you just have to stop the skid. It doesn't have to be pretty. You just got to get back in the win column. Antoine Bibeau makes 34 saves on the night, and they beat a team that's given them trouble this year and throughout the course of their franchise history. And a much better effort, like you mentioned, after Cleveland, and they got right. They got back in the win column, and they were able to kickstart the homestand on the right foot.
It wasn't a huge crowd Wednesday night for that win against Syracuse, but on Friday and Saturday, really good crowds at CAA Arena. We had the Pride Night on Saturday, which went really well, but the results on the ice are really the talk of the town. A 5-3 win on Friday, a 5-4 overtime win on Saturday. Both come from behind victories, and that's really become kind of the MO of this team. Not necessarily a positive thing if you talk to the coaching staff, because it usually means they had a slow start and were trailing at some point in the night. But the overarching theme of this season has been resilience, and just another couple examples of the Senators showing that. Yeah,
Antoine Bibeau, again, really good in net and helped them get back into the hockey game. And you kind of sit there and you say, oh, not this again, right? When Laval goes up early in that hockey game. And it's Angus Crookshank again with a 2-goal performance to get him back into the hockey game. And Belleville ultimately gets back in front. Jacob Bernard-Docker gets his first of the season from the high slot there, as he kind of kept moving his way closer and closer to the net, looking, hey, should I shoot this puck? He eventually does. He scores and gets rewarded, and Igor Sokolov then ties the franchise record with a goal. And
franchise record for points.
Yes. Yeah. At 116 then, and you start to feel good about yourself, and you go into the locker room and you say, hey, we got 2 wins. We're back in the column here, and you start the 3-game mini set with Laval off on the right foot, so to speak, and you carry that into Saturday night as well. And
on Saturday, again, you're kind of riding high. You've got the back-to-back wins, starting to find your footing a little bit under a new head coach in David Bell, and adapting to the way that he wants to run his locker room as opposed to Troy Mann before him. And then you go down early again against Laval, or I guess not early, but you go down first. And again, the Sens have to battle back, and they do it again. They get a couple goals from Jake Lucchini, including the overtime winner. They get a couple goals from Roby Arvente, who's starting to round into form. And they score 5 times again. Like over the first 3 games of the homestand, the Sens scored 14 times. And that's offense that we have not seen going back probably to the new year. Even when they went on their 3-game win streak at the start of 2023, They scored 16 times in 3 games because of a big 6-1 win at home against Manitoba. But that offense has not been there to that level where they're scoring 4-5 times a game. And you need to score that much, especially in a division like the North that has so much firepower.
Yeah, and I think a big credit goes to Roby Reventi and the way he's been able to play over this course of this 4-game week. And he goes on and he has a 4-point streak over it and 4 goals in total. And I think he's really found his mark as a centerman, so to speak, now. And I think the big thing with him is that's a really tough injury to get over, knee injury, and I think he's healthy now. He's feeling it, and you need your best players to carry you, and that's what happened over a lot of these games. It was Jake Lucchini, it was Roby Reventi, Mark Kastelik's chipping in helpers, Lassie Thompson gets going.
Cole Castles was on a 5-game streak again.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to, at the end of the day, your best players have to be your best players. And a lot of the time this season, those guys haven't been in the lineup. And as much as maybe you don't really want to lay blame to it or say, we got a lot of injuries. And I know downstairs they don't like to get into that kind of talk, and they're all show their sportsmanship. But at the end of the day, when you don't have a guy like Roby Reventi and you don't have Jake Lucchini because he's in the NHL, and you don't have Rourke Chartier because he's up and down and he's hurt, and your offense just isn't going to be clicking, because as much as we like to say Chad Yetmans and the Matthew Bouchers and the Jared Lucas Savages of the world, they're great guys and they play extremely hard, but they're not going to be able to get you to that next level offensively like we've seen over the course of this win streak and the course of this great stretch of play offensively.
Yeah, and the offense dried up on Monday, due in part a lot to Caden Primo and him rebounding and getting a little bit of revenge back from the loss on Friday. But, I mean, and again, I say the offense dried up. The goals dried up. Sens had 40-plus shots, their highest shooting output of the whole homestand, yet still lost the game. And but another game where they went down early and 4-0 early and just couldn't battle back. They get a couple goals again from Roby Reventi, so back-to-back 2-goal games for him, which is the bright spot. But the Monday afternoon game was a little bit more what we expected to see out of a Laval Rocket team that was absolutely flying before the Sens kind of put a screeching halt to their skid earlier in the weekend. Yeah,
and when we talked to David Bell after the game, he said we knew they were going to come out flying like they did, and they caught him. And Joel Teasdale scores 12 seconds in, and they get that confidence back on their bench. And when they're confident and they're letting Caden Primo see the puck, and that just builds for them. And they rode him to an Eastern Conference Finals last year, and they're going to try to ride him to a playoff position this year. And you look at it, Pierre Dubé, he's got a ton of shots. He's ended up with 7 shots, I believe, tonight. And Anthony Richard seems to be a Sens killer. Joel Teasdale's got 18 goals in his last 24 games. So as much as Belleville was able to shut them down for the first 2 games of the mini set, you kind of felt these guys are going to wake up and they're going to get going eventually, and they did it in a big way Monday afternoon.
Yeah, and that's how the homestand ended after a really great start. But, talking to Dave Bell after the Monday game, again, we said, is it at least a positive? You won 3 of 4 at home on the stretch. You take 6 of 8 points. Is that something to be pleased with? And he said, yeah, but no, really. We're at the point now where we've played 50 games. There's 22 games left in the season. And that means there's only 66 points up for grabs. Is that math correct? I think so. No, 44, because you only get 2 points for a win, not soccer. Either way, lots of points still up for grabs, but also a lot of points that can easily slip away. And that is kind of, I think, the outlook that the Senators are taking out of this is it was good, but it's still not good enough for us to accomplish the goals that we have set.
Yeah, and I think, too, with the Saturday night game, is Laval is able to sneak a point out of that game as well, so they end up with 3.
Yeah.
So it's not as as big of a gap as you think maybe it is. And that's the problem with these 3-point games now is everyone's in it, which is great for the league. It's great for entertainment value, and everyone in the North is going to be in it till the end, especially if Belleville can keep going the way they've been going here and continue this when they head out to the East Coast of America.
Do you have some recalls and injuries to update you on? We'll do that in a sec. First, we'll give you the North Division standings as they sat after the game on Monday afternoon. So depending on when you're listening to this, if you're tuning in ahead of the games this week out in the Atlantic Division, may be out of date by then. But as of Monday afternoon, Belleville Senators were 5 points back of the Rochester Americans in 5th place. Laval winning on Monday saw them leapfrog Rochester into 4th, and they're in that spot by a point. Cleveland is the 6th place team, only 1 point out of the race. Belleville is, 4 points back of Cleveland, 5 back of Rochester. It's tied between Utica and Syracuse in 2nd and 3rd, and the Marlies pretty well have run away with this division. They've got 73 points. They're among the top teams in the American Hockey League overall. So a lot can change and will change in the division over the next month and a half-ish until the season ends. But the Sens really do have to get to work. And, it's fine to win 3 and lose 1. They need to win another 3 or 2. They need to start stringing some wins together, or that gap is going to start to seem insurmountable by the time we hit mid-March with a month left to go in the season. And you don't want that.
No, and I think, too, you're looking up at the standings, and Cleveland's got 2 in hand, Rochester's got 3, so the clock is ticking. It's as much as we like to say the season's long, it's getting short pretty quick here, and the Belleville Senators off to a good start in the Dave Bell era, especially this weekend, and I think if you look at this, you have to come out of it with a positive mindset that Antoine Bibeau was stellar for the first 3 wins, and the offense gets going. Roby, I think we can now all kind of sit back and relax and say, okay, he's healthy. Mm-hmm. He's figuring it out.
He's back.
Yeah, he's back in a big way. Angus Cruikshank was outstanding earlier in the week. Jake Lucchini, in and out of the lineup, not playing much in Ottawa. I think he's found his game here again, and I think when you look back at this week, you come back with a lot of positives. And David Bell, I know, is a guy that likes to sit there and watch tape and dissect everything. And he'll come up with some pretty good game plans for three good opponents coming up this week. I keep saying next week, but it is this week.
Yeah, it is coming up in just a few days. Thursday in Bridgeport, Saturday in Wilkes-Barre, and Sunday in Hershey. We'll tee those games up in a little bit. We're going to get to Ben Cochrane, Manager of Business Operations for the Belleville Sens, for a mid-episode edition of Get to Know Your FO. Full disclosure, half of that interview was aired on the broadcast Monday afternoon, so might sound a little weird in that sense, but that's how we had to throw things together with an off day Tuesday, and obviously the matinee here and a busy weekend. Before we do that, let's recap the call-ups and the injuries, because there was a handful of both following the doubleheader in Cleveland. Both goaltenders got called up, including obviously Matt Sogard and Kevin Mandalese, so they're both up in Ottawa. Dylan Hetherington and Jacob Larson were both called up this week, and there hasn't been anybody sent back. The Senators called up Xavier Bernard from Allen in the ECHL and signed Chad Yetman to a PTO as well, his second PTO of the season with Belleville. So those are some of the transactions on a busy week, but it's the injuries, I think, that are really going to be the big story here as we move forward into the rest of this week and beyond. The Sens are going to be without at least a couple of big-name players, guys who were either making significant impacts on the club or expected to make significant impacts and just having some trouble getting back to full strength after a previous injury.
Yeah, and Scott Sabrin, I think, is the big name on that list. 16 goals and just the heartbeat of this club at times, and really difficult injury for him as he's having a career, making his mark with the Belleville Sens, and I know that they missed him tonight, especially with a Laval team that plays some heavy minutes, and guys like John Parker-Jones and Riley McKay, and I think they really missed him. Bren Saulnier's not 100% after taking a puck to the face. Yeah, he was wearing the full cage tonight. Victor Lodin, he'll get evaluated. Hopefully he'll be all right. But when you start looking down that list, it's a lot of big names again that's coming back to kind of haunt the Belleville Senators as it's been all season. And we hope Antoine Bibeau's okay, too, after he left the game today.
That's, of course, Monday is when we are recording this program after the matinee loss to Laval. So the injured list as we head in through the rest of the week: Victor Lodin, Jace Howerluck, Phil Daou, Kyle Betts, Rourke Chartier, Matt Wedman, and Scott Sabourin, all out basically until further notice. We don't really have timelines on returns for those guys, so you'll have to stay tuned to the Belleville Sens social media at Belleville Sens for updates, and of course to us on the broadcasts as we get you up to date on what's happening. Maybe we'll have more info on next week's Belleville Sens podcast, which is a nice reminder for you to rate and review the show. Subscribe, first of all, so you don't miss an episode, and follow along all season long as we continue here on the Belleville Sens podcast. Episode 6 continues. We're shuffling the deck a little bit. This whole week has been about adapting and adjusting, and it's a mid-episode edition of Get to Know Your FO, Get to Know Your Front Office with Manager of Business Operations Ben Cochrane coming up. We'll chat with him about the extremely successful Sens in School program, and we'll find out what it's like for a guy who, I won't say grew up as a Sens fan because he's a little older than us, but a guy who was around when the Sens came to Ottawa while he's living in Ottawa, his hometown, and what it's like to work for the minor league affiliate of the Ottawa Senators and see the next wave of that team come through. So Ben Cochrane joins us next, and then we will tee up this week's games in Bridgeport, Wilkes-Barre, and Hershey on the Belleville Sens Entertainment Network and the Belleville Sens podcast. Back on the Belleville Sens Entertainment Network, you're either listening to this interview on episode 6 of the Belleville Sens podcast or during the intermission between the Sens and the Rocket. David Foote here, and we're with Belleville Sens Manager of Business Operations, right, Ben Cochrane, as we sneak in a little Get to Know Your FO. If you've been listening to the podcast, you're familiar with the segment. We catch up with a member of the Belleville Sens front office team to give you a little bit more of an inside look at the day-to-day operations and how things actually work and get done in our office. And it is family day as well, again, if you're listening to this on the broadcast. So we figure we get Belleville Sens resident family guy, Ben Cochrane, here as well. Thanks for taking some time, man.
It's my pleasure.
It's a crazy day here for us at CAA Arena. It is family day, and we've got lots going on, but we had to make sure we caught up with Ben and got the podcast recorded because we hit the road this week, and we don't want to leave the listeners without their weekly recaps. So we figured we'd squeeze this in. We'll get to a little bit more of the typical Get to Know Your FO questions in the second half of this interview, which you'll be able to hear exclusively on episode 6 of the Belleville Sens podcast. But let's talk just a little bit about, I think, maybe one of the biggest things that you've been part of this season, and that is the school program. Sens in School has been such a fantastic success, at least from everything that we've heard. How much effort, I guess, I mean, I know, but tell us, how much effort went into getting that program up and running, going back to the start of the season?
Yeah, this was a big one that I was happy to do. I love the community side of everything that the team can do and the ability that we have to be out there and bring our players or bring the team or connect with people in different ways. And the school program was one of these things that lots of teams do. Lots of people are familiar with it. Junior teams do it all the time. Other professional teams do it all the time. But over COVID was definitely something that got dropped a little bit and just couldn't do it, and was something we looked at in the off season and said, let's do it again. How can we do it? What can we do? And I was happy to jump on that project and see what we can do, see what was involved, and try to build out a program that we could do something structured, a little bit structured. As you know, you've been on some of them. Sometimes it's a little more structured than others, but all of them have been such a hit when we get there, despite any chaos getting out there. Once we get there and walk through the doors and the kids are there and the teachers are there and we start getting going, it's just a great connection point for us between the guys on the team that come with us and the variety of them that have done them and the kids once we're there in front of them. And
it has been such a labor of love, really, because as you mentioned, you enjoy the community aspect of the job and of being a hockey team in a community like this. But so much work went into this, and I said at the start of the season, but realistically, this has been something that's been in the works basically since last season ended, and deciding to go with the coloring books and getting the school boards involved. It's a lot more than just showing up at a school and parading a couple guys around. For sure, yeah. We started this probably in May of last year, right after the season ended, and started talking about what we could do and how we could do it and what we needed to do it right, who we needed to talk to. So we reached out right at that point to the 3 local school boards that are around our area, touch base with the people, the directors of education in each of those, and say, here's what we want to do, a rough idea at that point of what we want to do and why we want to do it, and look for their help. We didn't want to do it on our own. We didn't want to build something that wasn't relevant. We wanted to be able to bring something into the schools that they can look back on and be memorable for the kids, but also be valuable that the teachers can look at it and say, yeah, I want to do this for the kids. What can we do? What can we build into that program? Like you said, with the coloring book, we bring to all the schools. That Alex did a great job designing that in-house and putting that together. Alex Smith put a lot of hours into design and page design and cover design and trying to do that in-house and really make it our own and make it different, but something that we can take out. So we take those to every kid from kindergarten to grade 6 and pass those books out, and we see them in our box office now. Anytime someone comes by and brings those coloring sheets that are up on the wall behind us, and it's fun to see that it's gone for 6 months now. I guess longer than that. We're 9 months between May and now to see what it was to where it is now.
You mentioned 9 months of labor. How many schools have you visited so far, and how many are you planning on visiting throughout the season?
So we'll have 21 this year over the course of the season. So we've done 13 so far between, like I said, a variety of players that have taken their turn doing it and staff that have taken their turns doing it. But we've done 13 schools anywhere from Desirado out to Brighton. And we have 8 more planned between now and the end of the season. It's going to be a tight squeeze to get 8 more visits in. I know we're doubling up a couple days to get out there, but anywhere I think we hit Tweed and Napanee and Brighton and Belleville still through the rest of the year. So still lots of kids to get out and be a part of this.
What's the response and the reaction been like from the kids, from the staff, from just the people you've been interacting with?
It's been amazing. Yeah. I mean, we see it. It's fun to see part of it. I was walking through the rink a couple weeks ago, and there was a kid from one of the school visits that he made his presence known when we were at the school and made sure.
There's always one or two.
He made sure we knew who he was, but just walking through and just seeing him and him stopping me, not even a player, right? Just stopping me to say, "Hey, do you remember me? I was at the school."
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I actually do remember you. But it's a lot of fun to do that. It's been nothing but positive. It's been a variety of things, whether we've had guys doing floor hockey and catch the rubber chicken, and to Q&As and hearing some of the questions that the kids have of all ages, some serious, some fun, and everybody's just kind of taking it in stride and looking at it as an opportunity to do something that they don't get all the time.
You touched on the community aspect, and this team is such a community-based organization. You mentioned going all the way into the county and the Mohawk territory and Brighton as well. For yourself, you grew up in Ottawa, you moved to Cobourg. How nice is it for you to kind of get immersed in the Bay of Quinte region and see the fans of this organization and the teachers that are putting in so much work with these students, and just touching base with all those people that you meet on a week-to-week basis now with the Sens and school visits?
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I mean, you go to school when you walk in and see the signs that the kids have made and see the level of investment. Some days when you get through the grind of the season, you're just not so sure, and you feel it where it can be long days, and walking through the school and see a sign that a kid has made and put up at the school, or see the reaction when they're handed something, or they just get to shake their hand. There's nothing like it to be able to see the reaction, and it doesn't really match up to anything else like that.
What are the plans for next year? Are we already taking registrations?
We're making a list. There's been a few that have reached out after we filled up. So there is a page on our website at BellevilleSens.com on the community tab for the Sens in School program. So you can fill out there, fill out the information, look at the information that's there, and I will get back to you and see what we can have planned for you.
Yeah, it has been a lot of fun. And I think one of the things that everybody in our front office kind of quickly realized when they got here is it's a very small team, and it's a big job to run a hockey team. It's not an easy thing to do, and there's a lot more that goes on than just what happens on the ice, and that's part of why we're doing these features.
You have no idea until you're behind the scenes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, it's wild how much work goes into things, but it's been nice to kind of, I guess for you, maybe to transition into some things that you didn't expect to be doing, but things that still kind of interest you.
Yeah, my background involved a lot, even though I was in finance. I've done a lot of customer service and like the front-facing customer side of it. So I've been able to be in the box office a lot and dealing with customers and helping on that side, and I like that side and the interaction with that. So it's been a growing job as far as what I'm doing, but all along the same veins of what I'm familiar with and what I'm comfortable doing, and that's been great to see.
It's a very personable job, as you mentioned. How nice is it to kind of connect here with not only the staff, as David mentioned, a small staff, but the fans that you see, the season ticket holders that you see on a day-to-day basis, and they know you by name, and but also by that, the relationship you built, you're able to help them to get the best experience we can offer.
Yeah, I think that's what we're all here for. I mean, it's putting an experience. I mean, we see it in this building, especially when there's something special in this building, when people get here and kind of see what's going on and understand the product, both on the ice and off the ice, and what we're trying to do. It's definitely rewarding to be able to see that reaction, and it's amazing how quickly you do, like you said, build those relationships with people where you walk around the rink, and it's kind of that everybody knows everybody feel, and people will stop you, like you said, by name. But I think that's a rewarding part of this, to be able to build that relationship so that you're comfortable with them and knowing what you can offer and what you have that might appeal to them, but that they're comfortable enough to come to you and express any concerns or any thanks. And that's fun too, to be able, when you have that conversation, to say with someone who just says, you know what, I really like that. I appreciate you guys doing that. Whatever it is, it could be on the ice, it could be off the ice, but seeing that recognition, being able to have those conversations with people and explain why we're doing and what we're doing, it's definitely rewarding.
What about just the closeness of our group and our team, and it's kind of a family environment, like we said off the top. You're the resident family guy. Your kids are always
I'm the
here.
old man.
Well, sure. I mean, we're both.
You weren't going to say it.
We're the elder-ish statesmen of the office, which is fine. We can
more mature.
Let's go with that. More mature. But I mean, you bring you got twins. You bring them to the office frequently to help out with things. How nice is it to be able to include that? Because this job, if we've learned anything over the last 2 seasons now, it takes you away from your friends and family. The schedule is a grind. It's daunting, and it's not just the players who have to make these kind of sacrifices. So how nice is it to be able to have the twins here on a regular basis, and not just to have them hanging around, but to get them involved in things as well?
Absolutely. No, it's been a lot of fun. I mean, it's great to be in a place that is open to that, and you never know when you start on what those boundaries are, but it's nice to be able to talk here and understand and know that people around are understanding of that and of that situation, and are welcoming to that. I mean, my kids, they're a little older. They're 15, so they're not young and running around, but they love the fact that they can come in here and that people know them and they can have a conversation with people, and some days goof off a little bit, but just coming to the rink, they love the experience. And for me, being able to have them be a part of that and see some of that is something that I probably wouldn't have expected a couple of years ago before it came on.
Life tends to come full circle, as it would be. David mentioned at the top of the interview, you're from Ottawa, you're from the Ottawa area. to work in the Sens organization. Does that put a smile on your face?
Oh yeah, of course. That was huge for me, and that even when I started, that was part. I'm not gonna deny it. That was part of my selling point. I've been invested in this team since they started. So I'm still invested in it. I'm just invested in it a different way, but I've been a fan of this team since they came, being a kid living in Ottawa when the team came and being a part of that when they started and watching the first games in the Civic Center when they were sharing the 67s arena before they had theirs and being able to go. Still remembering my first game with Washington Capitals in the old Civic Center it was just an experience that I still look back on. So.
Yeah. And now you got a front row seat to watch the next generation of Senators. Couldn't ask for much more.
No, it's amazing.
It is. And so is the work that you've been doing here. Literally, the school program, everything else, we wouldn't have been able to get them off the ground without you. And as somebody who works closely with the players, I know they appreciate the work, and we appreciate everything you've done to get that program launched and keeping things rolling on a day-to-day basis. That business operations title doesn't come without the fact that you've got your hands
There's
in
a little bit of running around every day.
A gazillion different things. Well, we appreciate you squeezing some time in for us as well.
I appreciate it. It's a lot of fun.
You get to pick who's next on Get to Know Your FO.
I don't think... let's go with Alex. He's been familiar in the booth, so let's go with Siragusa.
Alex Siragusa is up next, so that will be on episode 7 of the Belleville Sens podcast. Ben Cochrane is the manager of business operations. How can people get a hold of you if they need to? Because, again, you've got your hands in all kinds of different things.
My name's on the website. You can find my phone. My phone number, my email, I think, are both there. My email's always busy, so feel free to reach out anytime.
And he's usually hanging around the box office at CAA Arena as well. So Ben Cochrane, the manager of business operations, our latest guest on Get to Know Your FO. We will be back with more of the Belleville Sens podcast, teeing up this week's road trip out east when we come back. Continuing on episode 6 of the Belleville Sens podcast, thanks to Sens manager business operations, Ben Cochrane, for his time. And thanks to you for tuning in again. One more reminder to rate, review the podcast, subscribe wherever you listen. Don't miss an episode and help us grow this thing to be a little bit bigger when we get started next season as well. David Foote, Joel Vanderlaan here. We recap the 4-game homestand. We've heard from Ben Cochrane. The only thing left to do now is set up the 3-game road trip that will come up this week. Sens will board the bus on Wednesday to drive to Bridgeport, play the Islanders Thursday, head to Wilkes-Barre, Scranton to take on the Penguins on Saturday, and the always difficult to play against Hershey Bears coming up on Sunday afternoon in another matinee, which the guys are probably not too excited about. The results in afternoon games this season have not been good. They'll look to reverse that trend coming up on Sunday. So let's talk about the opponents this week. 3 teams that we only see twice a year. 3 teams that we have, we've only seen 2 of these 3 teams so far. Bridgeport has not made a trip here yet, but let's start with that game in Bridgeport against the Islanders. A chance, I think the first 2 games of this trip are chances to legitimately pick up some points against 2 teams who have records very similar to what Belleville has, maybe a little bit better, but still in points and in terms of their divisional standings, the Bridgeport Islanders are a team that the Sens could pick up some points against.
They could very well do that, and I think when you look at the Bridgeport Islanders, I think it all kind of starts with their goalie, Corey Schneider. We saw him back in the day when he was with the New Jersey Devils.
Yeah.
He was getting sent down on rehab assignments. I think he made 2 or 3 rehab assignment starts in CAA Arena.
Two for sure.
Against the Belleville Sens.
Yeah.
So Corey Schneider still making it big in pro hockey, and he's got good numbers. He's got a .919 save percentage, and he's 14-5-3. So he's not going to be easy to beat. And then you look at their team. Chris Terry, a very good veteran in this league, 49 points. Andy Andrioff, another guy that's been around for quite some time and good veteran leader for that club. And when you start looking at the younger guys, the prospects, Ruslan Ishakov, who was at the American Hockey League All-Star game, I know there were some pictures of him and his fellow countryman Igor Sokolov joking around in the locker room, and William DeFore, who was a big name at the Memorial Cup last year. So when you look down their lineup, it's Vincent Savigny, who was here on a PTO in rookie camp with the Ottawa Senators organization. So there's familiar names all over the place, and but I think if you're looking from a Belleville standpoint, they're definitely a team that has struggled, especially when Corey Schneider's not in net. And it's a good opportunity to kind of kickstart the week, get back in the win column, and they're going to need to carry that momentum throughout. If because you mentioned Hershey on that Sunday afternoon is going to be a raucous building. It's going to be persuasive for the Bears, and they're going to need to pick up points earlier in the week and kind of bank those heading into that afternoon matinee game in Chocolatetown, USA.
And despite their spot in the standings, the Bridgeport Islanders will come into Thursday's game winners of 3 in a row, points in 4 of 5, and a team that, as you mentioned, have some offensive touch, a little bit of a few players with those recognizable names, but it is in net that's going to make the difference. And the Senators seem to get stung by good goaltending quite a bit. So whether it is Jakub Skarek or Corey Schneider, either way, that will pose a challenge on Thursday. But won't be an easy way to kick off the road swing, but might be a nice way to kind of dip your toe in the water back in the Atlantic Division and see how competitive you are. And then you'll turn around and head to Wilkes-Barre after that game, play the Penguins on Saturday, and the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins not having a great season, to say the least. But again, only a couple of points behind Bridgeport and Hartford, because like the North, the Atlantic is very tight as well. So who do we have to watch on Wilkes-Barre?
I think we go back to net. And
oh, great, yeah.
You got to look at Dustin Tokarski, much like Corey Schneider, a guy that's been around for quite some time, and he's got a 920 save percentage, so it doesn't get any easier after you face Caden Primo this afternoon here on Monday. And then you look at their offense, and it's Nylander, it's Puustinen, it's Drake Kajula, Philip Hollander. So they got some names there that can pose some difficult times for Antoine Bibeau. Now,
the Sens have seen Wilkes-Barre Scranton this season, actually played a really tight defensive game against them here on December 21st at CAA Arena, a 3-1 Belleville win. And I think this will be like the Laval games and all the success Belleville had against the Rocket. This will be one of those games where David Bell and his staff are keying in on this December game and saying, okay, they've got Nylander, they've got Puustinen, etc., but we were able to shut them down before, and we can do it again.
Yeah, and that has to be the key, right? And I think with David Bell, who's so in tune with watching the tape, he's going to come up with a game plan. He's a defensive-minded head coach, and he's going to make up schemes and ways to make those guys frustrated, like we've seen him do for 2 games this week against the Laval Rocket. He had Anthony Richard, he had Pierre Dubé, and those guys frustrated. You could see them on the bench that they weren't, their power play wasn't connecting, and they rely so heavily on that. It was second going into the week, and it dropped to 4. So David Bell's gonna get out the clipboard, and Ben Sexton as well, and Justin Peters always has his goal. He's ready to go. So I think that's something you got to look at when you're looking at a team like Wilkes-Barre, that they know how to beat them. They got the book, and they got to go back to looking at the film and find a way to do it once again.
All right, and then lastly, the Hershey Bears, the final opponent of the 3-game Atlantic Division road trip. You got to go into the Giant Center in Hershey on a Sunday afternoon. It's going to be packed. Like, you already know that. You know it's going to be 10,000 strong. You know they're going to be loud. You know they're going to be on top of you. And last time Belleville was in that building last season, an absolute thriller that they came out on the wrong side of in a loss. They're going to have to be, even at the end of the weekend, again, playing on short rest Saturday and night, Sunday afternoon, they're going to have to be ready to go, or the Hershey Bears are going to do what Laval did to them on Monday and make relatively light work if they get off to a good start.
Yeah, and I think it starts when you look at the Hershey Bears with that top line of Scarbosa, Frank, Vecchione, and that might be the top line in the whole American Hockey League when you really get down to looking at it. And I know Belleville faces a pretty good top line with Abrazazi and Shaw and Anderson when he's down and all those guys with the Marlies, but it's pretty similar when you look over at the Hershey Bears and just the amount of guys they can throw at you. Defensively, Dylan McElrath's always a pain to deal with. He's a big boy, and it's a good deep team, and they invest in their club. They bring in veterans, they pay them, and they make sure that those 10,000 fans, like you mentioned, that are going to be in that building are getting rewarded for coming out and paying the price of admission. And I think for Belleville, the last time we saw them, they played very well against them for 2 periods. And then that top line kind of got away, and Ethan Frank scored, and Vecchione started playing his game. And for the Belleville Sens, at the end of the day, it's going to be replicating that first 40 minutes and making sure that you can keep those guys in check for the full 60, because it's tough. And in net, Hunter Shepard's off to a really good start, 918 save percentage, and Zach Fucali seems to always be a tough guy to beat in this league, and he's had some success against the Belleville Senators back in his day with Laval and now with the Hershey Bears.
I'm not sure if it ever was a distraction. I mean, from the outside and the journalistic perspective, we look at things like this. The storyline going back to Hershey would have been Troy Mann returns again. And it's not a new thing. He's been back there a few times since he left the Bears some years ago. But it's one thing that the Sens won't have to deal with this year. They won't have to contend with that added storyline. And maybe it makes a difference. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know.
I think, too, and I think there's reason for that storyline to persist, right? He was great in the community. He won there. He won a lot there. So I think for him, it was always an emotional night. And for the fans, it was always nice to see a smiling face, a familiar face that brought them a lot of joy. Because at the end of the day, the fans want to see winning, right? And Troy did that a lot there. And he was also really good in the community, much like he was here in the Bay of Quinte region. So I think for the Belleville, it's now David Bell's turn to kind of put his stamp on the club, and getting a win in Hershey, that would be a nice way to do it.
That would do it, yeah.
Get a nice bus ride home for you and the guys.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough road trip for sure, and just because those two teams, Bridgeport and Wilkes-Barre Scranton, are near the bottom of the division doesn't mean you can take them lightly. I know the Senators won't, but it's definitely going to be a difficult trip, but I think a trip that, if you're doing the math, you need 2 of 3 this week to, and basically every week, I think, to stay in the hunt in our division because it's so tight.
Yeah, and it goes back to the old adage, win the week. That's always been the mantra here, and it's carried on by a guy we just talked about, and now it's David Bell's mantra to carry forward.
It's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun for sure. We'll have all the action here on the Belleville Sens Entertainment Network. Thursday night, 6:45 broadcast time. Saturday night, 5:50 broadcast time for a 6:05 puck drop in Wilkes-Barre Scranton. And then Sunday afternoon, February 26th, a 2:45 broadcast time for a 3 o'clock start against the Bears. Following that, the Sens return home. Wednesday, March 1st is a winning Wednesday against the Utica Comets. Friday, March the 3rd is Road to the AHL night, presented by Mackey Insurance. We've got the free Belleville Sens Road to the AHL hockey cards to give out to the first 2,000 fans. And then Saturday, March 3rd, is Bell Community Heroes Night. So there's lots of action coming up here at CAA Arena after the road trip, and you don't want to miss it, because if the road trip goes well, the guys are right back in the hunt, and they'll want your support to try to push them over the edge when they return home. Again, ticket details for all Belleville Senators home games at Ticketmaster.ca. Our group experiences and promotional ticket offers can be found anytime at BellevilleSens.com. Same with details on our school programs and things like that Ben Cochrane is responsible for. We thank him for his time on Get to Know Your FO this week. Alex Siragusa will be our next guest on Get to Know Your FO. And we always thank Joel Vanderlaan for his insight and analysis.
Yeah, it's always good to talk with you, David, and we talk a lot these days, which is nice, and it's always good to talk hockey, and especially Belleville Senators hockey, because it's quite entertaining.
It's always an adventure. Yeah, we get to talk a lot. Hopefully you enjoy listening to us talk, and you'll tune in again next week on the Belleville Sens podcast. Subscribe to the show, rate and review, and don't miss any of the action this week, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. For now, we'll talk to you later.